What's going on, world? It's your boy Gemini Ground here, back with another episode of Nalo Kicking Knowledge. Today, we'll be discussing the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn occurring on December 21st, 2020. So, let's get into it. Now, for quite some time, you've heard about this great conjunction set to occur, and we are with less than 2 weeks away from this point. And, the interesting thing here is that just like many of you, I've been on my own spiritual journey. So a lot of these things are my first, and a lot of astrology is about observation and seeing how those transits affect modern life and ultimately how history repeats itself. So, like I said, this will be my first Jupiter and Saturn conjunction that I'm conscious of. So what I've done is to understand this conjunction better, just gone back and really looked at it. And that's one of the beauties of being in this place and time, of having access to the things we have, like FRMDIS, and being able to dive back into the past and see the correlations between the transits and things that have manifested. And when you look at the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction cycle, it has a profound effect upon our waking life. So a couple things about it. First thing you want to know about this one, like I said, it's happening December 21st, 2020, the day of the winter solstice. And for me, I've just always am appalled at how the universe lines particular things up. Through the last few years, a lot of eclipses and new moons and full moons have occurred at pretty significant time. And I take it as just something to help us get more into alignment. Okay? So with this happening on the winter solstice, we have to take a look at the significance of that. Okay, this marks the beginning of the winter season, also the start of Capricorn season. And the start of winter is always a journey within, particularly living in a part of the world where you experience all four seasons. So as it gets colder and you're forced to be inside more, that reflects upon the self. You're able to do more inner work. Life kind of slows down. It's a very yin type of time period, and then you emerge back in spring with seeds to plant off of a perspective and all of that. So the winter solstice within itself is quite significant, and it has its own chart that we can read and see the influence of the next year or 6 months. So with this conjunction occurring here, which has its own significance of a cycle going forward, it really lines up. Okay, so a couple things about the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction. It occurs every 19 to 20 years, and within that, the significant thing about it is that it occurs at the beginning of decades. And I feel like that truly sets a tone, and it's almost like a even path that you can see unfold clearer, right? When you get a whole 10 years of influence from a particular point to the next. So it occurs every 19 to 20 years. And we have to take into account the significance of what a conjunction is. It is when two planets are within the same sign, and at this point at the exact degree of one another in the same sign. And this is going to be occurring at 0 degrees of Aquarius, another significant factor of here we go. And I guess that should allow me to also say this is not the this is not the beginning of the age of Aquarius. That's a whole nother thing. And I would just say this is just rather a Aquarius signifactor, because like I said, it is a cycle that we are going to be in. All right. So the conjunction, it comes together, and the planets are really like merging. They're merging, and there's the opportunity to begin anew. It represents the end, but also the beginning, right? And within this particular cycle, it deals with things regarding leadership in society, personal leadership, structure. So everything, you want to think of it on 3 different levels. Think of it how it affects yourself, how it affects society, and how those individual things manifest in those realms. So leadership, structure, influence, belief, discipline. The real emphasis is leadership, because Jupiter is the archetype of the guru. Saturn is the archetype of the father, the disciplinarian, the authority. So no matter what sign this occurs, there's always the chance for new ways of thinking or expressing through the lens of leadership. Okay? So when we start to look at what these 2 planets represent, we want to hone in on the idea of natural movement. And that is that Saturn, in its nature, restricts things. It makes it denser. Jupiter, in that sense, is the opposite, in which it seeks to expand or enlarge. And when you look at it in different lenses, Saturn wants to moderate or limit what you get here. Jupiter wants to give you as much of it as it can, or it represents a balancing of 2. So when it comes to this cycle, that is the natural foundation of how it takes place, whether you look at it within yourself or within society. Expansion and restriction. So with that, we see change will always manifest or come about through this way, through a Jupiter and Saturn cycle. But the key is what sustains. All right, Jupiter's almost the vision, the blueprint, the ideology. Saturn is the structure that goes into it. So going forward with this occurring in the sign of Aquarius, we see those themes set to dominate. So let's take a look at that a little bit more. And another cool thing that I discovered while researching the cycle is that with it occurring every 20 years, the movement is that of a trine, because as you can see, if it occurs in 1800 in Capricorn, in 1820 it is set to occur in Taurus. All right, and as you go, you see this movement of 120 degrees, sign to sign. Okay, I might have said that wrong in the example, but yeah, it's 120. So it's moving through those signs. Now, in 1980, this conjunction occurred in the sign of Libra, which is an air cycle, and it was a precursor to the start of this particular air cycle. So when in 80, it was in Libra, and then in 2001, it occurred in Taurus. Okay, now it's occurring in Aquarius, which is going to continuously occur for the next 200 years within air signs. Now, this is significant because you want to look at the elemental influence in the sense of it being occurring in earth signs, which is the material realm, which is resources, which is survival. All right, with it now, and seeing how those things have manifested. So it was like a lot of structuring towards structures within society that support the flow of those things I just named: survival, resources, the development of materialism. Okay, so when you look at that last 200-year cycle, you have the development of the things like the stock market. And then the interesting thing there is that with the growth, going back to the idea of expansion and contraction, with the growth of that, something like the stock market, you also had the crash of it around the Great Depression, which occurred at the opposition point. Okay, so that, like I said, I really suggest you guys dive into looking at this cycle transit wise and seeing how it's translated. So major change occurs, but how that change comes about will really be influenced by, for one, that element that the conjunction occurs in. Now, with it being within this air point, air is communicative. Air is about ideas, and it supports collaboration. Whereas in the pursuit of material comfort, there can be a bit of, selfishness there, or a more focus on the I, where within air, you're always conscious of the other and how the other can benefit you. And then with this occurring in Aquarius, we look at things like social groups, technology, innovation. These are all, we're at the start of a cycle regarding the expansion of those things. And with the expansion of those things is going to become a restriction of an old way of doing things. Hence, Pluto finishing up its transformative cycle in the sign of Capricorn. Okay? So think about Aquarius and what that means and how you can activate this energy within your life. Now, the next thing here that we're going to discuss is the influence of Aquarius and it being ruled by Uranus, which is in the sign of Taurus. And the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction will be in the first decan of Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus, and being that Uranus is in Taurus, will come into a square. And this is a direct confrontation of our personal values, the old self, old ways of doing things conflicting with the new. Now, one of the major themes that will be there will be selfishness. So a major hint of advice is there's a humbling effect here of unity and the need to assess strength in numbers. So whether or not you have watched this show or understand it, I suggest that you study it a bit and allow it to reflect in your perspective. And that show is Star Trek. And for me, Star Trek is Aquarius. It is Aquarius in nature so much that it really shows a natural progression of human evolution. From watching Star Trek, I realized that every species has a personal evolutionary track. And with the age of Aquarius approaching that, or coming into this time period, it shows that we are headed there. So the foresight is to think more for the betterment of the collective and less about the I, and the understanding of how the collective, no matter what is significant or unique about you, what talent you have, Leo, it can't be carried far without the support or admiration of the collective, which is Aquarius. So we're really all going to need each other at this particular time. So when you think of Aquarius, think of Star Trek. And if you've never watched Star Trek, I really suggest checking it out, because it does have profound insights. Now, personal influence of the Great Conjunction regarding houses, socially and spiritually, right? 3 different levels. Now, the houses, we know that's going to be our direct experience with it. Where did this, what new beginning am I embarking on? Where is this happening for me? But no matter where it's happening for you, the themes of the house and the sign are going to be related towards needing to develop structure towards your higher ideals. So in short, finding what you're about, what you want to give back towards society, where you fit in, figuring that out and finding others who support that, and putting yourself in positions or living your life in accordance with that principle. That's the Jupiter aspect of it. And the Saturn aspect comes in the sense of the duty or the responsibility or the work you put in towards that particular thing. And from that, you get the luck of Jupiter through taking responsibility or putting in the work that Saturn urges you to do. All right, so the next area of influence is going to be socially. As I said previously, with this being an air sign, and with the North Node also being within an air sign, this speaks of a need for increased sociality, communication of ideas, and going back to Aquarius, overall support of the group. Our individuality is going to be expanded through that of the group, expanded and influenced. So for many people, it's going to work in one of 2 ways. You are either going to be the influencer or you are going to be influenced. There will be times where you will experience both, because that's even how I'm here. I was influenced, and from that I became an influencer. So I really see this as a combining that with the spirituality aspect. I expect there to be a real increase in the amount of esoteric or holistic approaches towards doing things, an expansion of coverage, regarding that. And then also with that, an expansion of people wanting to play the role of that Jupiter-Saturn type person. All right. Now, it's even almost like a build off too, because coming off of this year of Jupiter being in Capricorn, we saw the rise of a lot of those whose mentality was really centered around the material realm and things of that nature. But going back to this point, our groups are going to have a profound impact on us. And with that, like I said, it's going to be the death of an old, but it's going to give birth to new circles, new people. And when I cover the houses, I'll talk, more about that. But that increased unity leads back to less ego. And then when we look at the spiritual aspect, Jupiter is that need to live the truth. then applying it to Aquarius is like living and sharing that truth with, the group, with other like-minded individuals. How we arrive at this is going to be through tapping into Saturn, okay? Structuring our lives around a particular thing. So the next way we can look at this as a particular type of social responsibility, and what we decide to do with that social responsibility. The more we project that social responsibility, the more we express the opposite, which is that Leo end. But at the same time, it's strengthening the Aquarius. And so, like I said, I encourage you guys to really strongly meditate upon this cycle and go over what I said in the beginning of just the movements of Jupiter to Saturn and overall what that relationship is. I will be doing a video covering, this influence through all 12 houses, just so you guys have, a clearer understanding. But everything I say here is pretty, profound. So it's a great time, and I hope you guys, this conjunction, the new year, everything finds you in great spirit. So feel free to chime in. Let me know what you think. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, you can do so now. Until next time, peace.